Hello, I'm Sean Shelton, and today I will be presenting on sales contracts. To start off, what is a sales contract? Well, a sales contract is an agreement between a buyer and a seller covering the sale and delivery of goods, securities, and other personal properties. Now, to get to the importance of a sales contract, a sales agreement can either keep a business organized, prevent miscommunication between businesses, and protect both parties from legal matters and also inform people with specific details. Sales contracts lays out all the particulars that go along with the sale of goods. It includes the how, the when, where, and who of transactions. Also gives evidence in court of a valid contract and actions of either the seller or the buyer. To further explain the importance of a sales contract, here's an actual court case um, that has to do with the sales contract. So, person one is P, person two is D. P was having difficulty making ends meet because the crop was poor on the farmland he leased from person D. P alleges that D agreed to provide enough water for 100 additional head of cattle. If he would have put them to pasture on his land, the water supply failed. However, and so then the 174 head of cattle lost value due to their starvation. And P was damaged in the sum of $2,500. The nature of the risk, both parties assumed the risk of fulfilling exactly the terms of the contract, however absurd and improbable as long as it remains possible to fulfill that contract. The issue was there actually a contract between P and D? So contracts must be in certain terms and not so indefinite and illusory as to make it impossible to say what is promised. So that means that the contract has to list the exact terms so that it is easy to make out what is being said. Reasoning, the language between P and D was taken as advice and not a contract. So the court concluded that there was no contract. The court overlooked that D was aware that P bought the cattle as the D had induced him to do by relying on D's advice. And this would probably constitute as a contract. So therefore, the court deemed it that it was not a clear contract between the two. And there are ways that this could have been prevented if they were definite and precise on their agreement and had it writtenly in a written form, had paper copy of the contract. Understanding sales contracts. Sales contracts are very important for businesses and companies that have to handle products and services, as the story that I just read you basically implies. Usually, sales contracts are not generalized but instead altered to the specific needs of a business. Commonly, it's attached to an invoice or bill of sale, and it includes services, products, payment terms, buyer's rights and obligations, liabilities, identification, etc. It should include delivery details, and it can be written or orally binded, but I would say written is the way to go when you're dealing with a sales contract. We're going to go over the essentials of what to have in a sales contract, like the most important stuff that you will need in a sales contract. And to start with that is description of goods. You must identify the specific items that the buyer is trying to purchase. Important details such as weight, color, size, model number, and type of goods that you two are agreeing upon. The second essential is delivery instructions. You must clearly state the time and delivery dates in your sales contract, the location, all parties involved in delivery, and parties involved in the transit and responsibility for the loss of products when in the delivery process. Warranties. I'm pretty sure everyone heard of a warranty. If not, just to let you know, standard warranties do not exist. A warranty is a guarantee in a written form and is usually issued to the person that is purchasing. All different types of warranties, there isn't just one. Warranties are legally binding, so it binds the seller and creates legal obligations for the seller. It is included in most sales contracts, not all. Payment details. So, of course, it is good to include the total price of goods in your sales contract. Payment options on how the goods will be paid for, whether it's in separate installments or all at once. Promissory notes are interesting. So if there is a promissory note involved in the sales contract, a promissory note is a signed agreement that describes money to be paid by a specific time between the two parties. So if there's a promissory note involved, it basically gives the person selling the product the right that if you do not pay on time, to add money on top of the money that you already owe. So in this case, interest could be involved if not paid on time. Sales contracts in the UCC. The UCC stands for Uniform Commercial Code, and it kind of looks over sales contracts. It gives them a set of rules. Under the UCC, a written sales contract should specify the parties that are involved, the subject matter to be sold, in any material or special terms or conditions. Some states also require that the consideration, the amount and type of payment to be specified. Any sale of good contract that is worth more than $500 must be in written form. Sales of property must be at least $5,000 before a contract in writing is necessary. So as you see, there are different amounts for the different types of things that are involved for a sales contract and whether or not it has to be written or orally binded. To say otherwise, an oral agreement is considered a binding contract. Getting out of a sales contract without being legally wrong or having a great reason to why you can get out of the sales contract. To start, carefully read and detect language in the contract that could give you a right to put an end to the agreement. And an example of that is commonly called a termination clause. Some sales contracts come with termination clauses, and if that termination clause goes along with the reason that you are backing out of the contract, then it is acceptable. If the party that you are doing a deal with does not properly hold up their end of the agreement, or if something doesn't fall through, the contract can be terminated legally without a lawsuit. And that is called a breach of contract or breach of other party / fraud. Carefully explaining why you cannot go through with the agreement with specific facts and reasons that sufficiently holds your point. It's best to do that in person, face to face, with somebody else there as a witness, and that is through negotiation. In case of a death or natural disaster or situation out of a person's control that has to deal with the contract, this can be a way for a contract to be voided. So This is basically known as a reason that for you to cannot perform the contract. Lawsuits. Lawsuits are very common when it comes to sales contracts. So avoiding lawsuits from sales contracts is a good thing to know. As is clauses. This ensured that the buyer is agreeing to buy the product in its current condition. So no matter if the buyer does not like what they received, the as is clause protects the seller because they are selling the product as is. A smart way is just to keep everything legitimate with no frauds, no breaches, with nothing wrong. There should be no reason for a lawsuit as the seller. Legitimacy is very important. Knowing your legal rights, having a general understanding of your rights as a buyer or seller can also help you avoid lawsuits. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you.